What is going on, Mad Hatters, and welcome back to the Madhouse. And today we're talking about the one and only Baja Blast, the green blue, the emerald sapphire, whatever you want to call it. That is what we're talking about. We're going to talk about why I think this is going to become the deck to beat. I've said it since the beginning of the set. In my Dreamborn, it's like the first line on there of that this deck has everything that we need a good deck to have in this set. It can challenge Genie, Dumbos, it can clear aggro, it can draw, and it has multiple ways of doing all of these things. And I've said it from the start, I think it will become the deck to beat, and I think we are getting there. It's just difficult. This deck, it changed a lot and fundamentally on how you play it, and that's made it harder to kind of solve the puzzle. And do I think we've solved it yet? No, I do not, because there's still a lot of different versions of green blue running around. But I think we're getting really close. I think we're cracking that nut, and I want to talk to you about where I'm at with it and why I would play it this weekend if I was going to CCS or the Ink Invitational, two massive events happening this weekend. And I want to talk to you through my choices of cards, and then also kind of what I'm looking for against what I think will be the four most popular decks this weekend. So without further ado, let's get this out of here. We'll make my face smaller if I can figure that out, because nothing wants to cooperate. There we go. All right, so first things first, the list. And here we go. Old School Baja. And I call this Old School Baja because it's making me feel like what we ran in previous sets. And I started moving back to the 8 songs because it was feeling really like I felt like that was something I was missing. These 8 songs feeds the most powerful card in the deck, being the Big Cow. Like, don't think that there's no denying it. Big Cow is the most powerful card in the deck. The ability to get so much card advantage from her is phenomenal. It is absolutely phenomenal. She's a big body that your opponent has to trade so much into, and she quests for 2. So it's just a massive, massive card. And I felt like she wasn't being utilized correctly. Like, I'd play her and I'd think to myself, I need to cut her because she's just not drawing me cards. And so I moved back to these 8 songs, the Mother Knows Best and You're Welcome. And what happened when I did that is that it was just feeling off. I was on 480s still. I was on this heavy discard package. Shout out to Two Changs and for giving me kind of the motivation to go that direction. So I started building that direction, and the deck felt really strong on the draw. It felt amazingly strong on the draw, but it felt like I just felt extremely weak on the play. And so I moved back to 8 songs and to more abuse the Clarabelle. And then what had happened is JP posted a list, I think it was last night, and he had the Donald Duck in there. And the Donald Duck, I remembered very early on in preseason on Fight Club, I had played someone playing Donald Duck, and I thought it was the weirdest thing in the world, and I couldn't understand why they'd want to play it. And now that I've played 100 games of green blue, I realized I knew something was still missing, and Donald Duck has filled that void of what I felt like was missing overall. Donald Duck is awesome, and let's focus in on Donald Duck. He's a 4-cost inkable, 2/5 quest for 2, and then his ability at the start of your turn, each player may draw a card, and that's really big, and that's big for a multitude of reasons. A lot of the time, you can, with this list and with the Hades list, you can risk bricking pretty hard, especially the Hades list, because you'll get to a lot of Hades, a lot of Under the Seas in your hand, and next thing you know, you don't have any ink, so you're never able to get to the strongest cards in your deck, being on 6-7 ink, and you're just stuck there. And there's games you just lose because you could never get to those cards. You had to ink the cards that you really needed. Well, Donald Duck helps fill that void because now you slap him down on 4 and you're instantly getting to draw more ink, and that is huge. Like there's so many games since putting him in that Donald Duck on 4 has just won me games because he got me the ink that I needed, and that was massive. Now, it's more than just drawing cards, though. It's also the fact that he quests for 2. I've been a really strong advocate of Pleakley since the beginning of the set. I loved Pleakley. I thought that it filled a void that we desperately needed filled, and that there wasn't a lot of card draw, and Pleakley giving that ramp in the kind of the same way Donald Duck does was huge. And he fought into purple steel. So amazing. And Pleakley is in my other list, my more discard orientated list. But one of the issues with Pleakley is that I was running a lot of 1-drops for Pleakley, and I was running Pleakley. So where the discard list that I'm running was doing phenomenal against aggro, like 100% win rate into aggro. Not really, you still lose games, but you get the point. It was phenomenal into aggro because you just discard their hand and then control their board. But it was not doing well against Blurple. It did better against Blurple on the draw. Like, it was a deck that I legitimately felt was stronger on the draw than on the play, and that felt not too great. So, like, now if I win a dice roll, I guess I could let them go first still, but play draw disparity, abuse the play that makes you feel good, right? Or that it just is powerful. So the discard deck felt good, but it was still missing something. So this Donald Duck, he's questing for 2, so he's a great top deck. Like, whereas Pleakley was an awful top deck. There were games where I could just draw any character at all except a Pleakley and be perfectly fine. And so Donald Duck now is another great top deck. If you look at everything in this list, we're running 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 23, 24, 25 cards that quest for 2 or more. 25 cards that quest for 2 or more, and it's really easy to get to the point where you can play them. That is massive, and that's in part thanks to Donald Duck as well, being able to quest for 2. And then finally, Donald Duck having 5 health just helps him live through most things. Now, if you get the Wombo combo, you can go something like Clarabelle. You can get the Clarabelle down, and you can against Blurple, for example, you play 1-drop Clarabelle, you shift you ink to go to 3 ink with Tipo or Sail, and then turn 3 when you have 4 ink, you play Donald Duck, and then turn 5 you play Clarabelle, and then you sing You're Welcome with Donald Duck on against a Blurple anything, and then you get to draw a massive amount of cards. If they used Sail on turn 2, then you get to draw so many cards. All right, so many cards, and you just win. Like, there's no coming back for Blurple at that point. You just won the game. In play draw disparity, right? Because they can't get their Elsa down in time to take out your Clarabelle. And if they play Into the Unknown on your Clarabelle that turn, or if you did quest, for example, then they just put you at 7 ink. So now with 7 ink and 10 cards, you can play anything. You can control their entire board, and it's game over. Now, if they are better Blurple player and they do have the right ramp card and they play Tipo, it might not be as over, but it's probably over. So Donald Duck has just felt great. And then Scrooge McDuck, in the discard one, I play the chips over the Scrooge McDuck, and that there were so many games, especially on the play, where I just missed that Scrooge McDuck. That 5/5 questing for 2 is just so powerful. But to play Scrooge McDuck and to play Mother Knows Best, I had to cut possibly one of the best cards in the set, that being Hades. There were just too many uninkables. I did try keeping 1, because if you keep 1 Hades, then you can Mother Knows Best your own Hades and then replay the Hades, which is really strong. And it just wasn't coming up enough, so I decided to cut the Hades altogether. And then now bricking is really difficult because if I get to 4 ink, I'm perfectly fine bricking on a bunch of Scrooge McDucks. Like, if I have 3 Scrooge McDucks and that's what I play for the next 3 turns while I top deck inks, I'm perfectly fine with that. It's a 5/5 that quests for 2 and trades into anything in the game right now that they're playing that early. So I'm perfectly happy with that. So meanwhile, why the 6 Clarabelles? So the 6 Clarabelles again goes back to Big Clarabelle being the strongest card in the deck. We want to abuse Big Clarabelle. That's the whole thing we're trying to do. Worst case scenario, you don't draw any cards, but you still have a 5/6 body that you can challenge Purple Steel or Aggro with. That on its own is really strong. So we're running the 6 because, for example, on the play against Blurple, you always get to shift your Clarabelle on turn 4, like, because there's nothing they can do to stop that from happening, and that's really big. Now, on the draw, it's not as... the odds of it happening are a little bit harder. So we play the 3-drop shift Clarabelle because of Purple Steel on the play. Against Purple Steel on the play, they can't stop the shift from coming because unless they play Smash. If they play Smash, they can stop it, but not many Purple Steel players are playing Smash in my experience. So what happens is you go turn 1, pass, develop your brain, Clarabelle, Baby Clarabelle, whatever. Turn 2, you Tipo or Sail. Turn 3, you play Baby Clarabelle. And at this point, they're going into their turn 3 and maybe just now playing their 3-drop character if they can. So they could Strength of a Raging Fire your Clarabelle. I take that back. I am wrong. Math is tough, right? Yes, because then to their... no, they can't, because you play on your turn 3... on your turn 3, you play the Baby Clarabelle. And then on their turn 3, and you're on 4 ink. So their turn 3, they play the 3-drop, and then that can sing Strength of a Raging Fire, but you're already going into 5 ink on your turn 4. So then you shift Clarabelle. And so, yeah. So against Purple Steel, the 2/3 Clarabelle is better on the play. Against Blurple, I think the 1/2 Clarabelle is just better on the play because you can go Clarabelle turn 1 you can play Clarabelle, and then turn 4 you can play one of the ducks, either Scrooge McDuck or Donald Duck, and be perfectly happy with that. So that's really strong. Now, meanwhile, other things in the list, I kept John Silver's. I think John Silver is just an amazing way to beat Aggro, an amazing way to beat Purple Steel as well. It's not as great against Blurple. It just doesn't do as much there. In that game, it's really just questing for 2 with a big body. And then Heads Held High, Triple H, and Under the Sea just lets you clear everything. When Blurple is starting to put in a lot of TikToks, a lot of the vanished character Iago, like Heads Held High has been huge. And then Purple Steel runs the Cobras, the Calhouns, the Genies, the 3/4 Genie, the Dragon, right? So they play a lot of cards, the White Rose that Under the Sea doesn't clear. And then meanwhile, another deck that I don't talk about this is in this video or show off is Blue Steel. Blue Steel runs Scars and Lawrence's and Pleakley's and a lot of these cards that Under the Sea doesn't clear. So you're stuck having to run Heads Held High. And I was really against this card for a really long time. It hasn't let me down once yet. Worst case scenario, it's inkable. So... but that's kind of the list overall. Oh, Ratigan. We have to talk about Ratigan. Ratigan beats Blurple, like, just hands down. Like, it's just game over. You get a Ratigan down, and there's just nothing they can do against him. They can't Hades him, which is their strongest card in the deck. They can't Into the Unknown him, so that's really strong as well. You have all the cards you need to ink it to keep him alive because of Donald Duck. So the only way that your opponent deals with Ratigan is if they have enough characters down to clear Ratigan. And a lot of Blurple players have cut Monstro at this point, and that's really it. So now you play Ratigan after you have cards down, and he's just questing for 4. Worst case scenario, you get 1 quest out of him. And in that 1 quest, your opponent has to clear their own board to take him out. And so you just win anyways. The Blurple matchup with Ratigan has become infinitely easy, whether you're on the play or on the draw, and it's not bad against the other decks either. You have all these cards questing for 2, and then you slam down a Ratigan and quest for 4. I mean, Ratigan has been phenomenal. So that's all. We're on 2 because it felt bad if you get 1 in your opening hand and you're forced to ink it, and then you lose that win condition. So I went up to 2, haven't regretted it at all. So let's talk about the more popular matches and what I might be doing going into those matches. So these are just 2 lists that I pulled from Dreamborn. The top one is JDRR's Purple Steel list. The bottom one, I believe, is Harlan's Blurple list. And the reason I pulled these is because JDRR has the free Purple Steel guide. He's known as the Purple Sensei. And Harlan just posted a video on Blurple, and he's a well-respected individual in the meta, in the game. So I think these are going to be the 2 more popular lists. I think one thing that we will see differently with Purple Steel is I think we'll see a lot of people on Dumbos if they have them somewhere in here. But with that being said, looking at these lists, why do I feel like Baja Blast has so much ability in them, and what am I looking to do against them? So we'll start with Blurple because that's the easier one. Again, I think Baja Blast just now in the current version just has a really good showing against Blurple. And with that being said, what's going to end up happening is, what are the things you have to be most afraid of? Elsa's the thing that you have to be most afraid of overall, because on the draw she can slow down your on the draw she slows down your ability to get Big Clarabelle down. But things you can't forget about. Do not forget about Into the Unknown. It used to be relatively safe. You're like, oh, I can get some free quests out. I can do this thing. I can sing this song, whatever. Get some free quests. And they kind of want you to do that. So just don't forget about Into the Unknown. Yes, it gives you ink, which you may need, and it could be worth baiting that from the opponent. But be very weary of that. Other than that, there's not a lot you have to worry about anymore. You'll notice a lot of them are running the Madam M elephants now, and with that being said, I'm perfectly happy with that. Like, I really am. I am so happy that they're running Madam M elephants, and the reason for that is because now I can use my Donald Duck or the 3-cost Clarabelle, it doesn't matter, to bounce the Madam M elephant, and now they're stuck with this card in their hand. So they got rid of one of their cards, the Basil, the Rafiki, the free questing power, and then it's back in their hand, and now I bounce the Madam M elephant, and that's back in their hand, and so they're just filling up their hand for me so I can feed my big cow, and I'm perfectly happy with that. And it's just a 3/7. Yes, it can move damage around. It makes for great bells. So you do have to be weary of that later on. I think the most dangerous card in the deck, though, is Iago. I find Iago to be extremely annoying because he can kind of just halt the board until you find a way to deal with him. So do not instantly ink Heads Held High. Like, Heads Held High later on in the game is going to be really important. Early on, if you just need to ink it. That's not something you hold on to for a really long time. But later on, you're really going to want that. Now, with that being said, on the draw, do not just slam your Clarabelle down going into like your first turn 7, okay? Build your board. Get some Scrooge McDucks down, get some John Silvers down, maybe a Basil down and bounce something, because you want to bait out their Hades, or you want to bait out them thinking you don't have Clarabelle. So what will happen is a lot of these green-blue players, you're on the draw, your opponent goes to their 7 ink, and they play some stuff. And then you go to your 7 ink, and a lot of green-blue players just instantly play Clarabelle. And they're like, oh, yes, I'm going to get to draw 1 card. It's going to be so great. Yay! Then your opponent plays Hades on your Clarabelle. And then, to make it even worse, they kind of spit in your face, they sing Second Star to the Right. Congratulations. Now they get to draw 5 cards for free, and you can't even abuse it because you rushed down that Clarabelle. So force your opponent to play that Hades on anything else. Now, if they have multiples in their hand, they had the answer, and that's going to happen sometimes, and there's nothing you can do about it. And that's just life. But force them to have the answers. So try and bait it out and then play it. Now, if they play second star to the right, play it. Play that Clarabelle, draw those cards. Know that Clarabelle is going to get inked because they're going to play Hades on it. But you also get to draw 5 cards minimum, most likely 5 cards, because they played second star to the right. And it's not a card, unless they have Tipo, it's just going to sit in their hand. So eventually they'll play it. So just know that. And know that there's a lot of lists running it because No I'm Not ran it and did really well. And then you have Harlan Sweet running second star to the right, because second star is a phenomenal card in the Blurple mirror. And that's my biggest piece of advice against Blurple right now, is if you know they run it or suspect they run it, or just go into the match assuming they run it, and do not just slam down Clarabelle on your 7 ink, okay? Unless, the only if you were able to hyper ramp to it and could get like 2 turns with Clarabelle before they were able to get to their Hades. And that is also a pretty good win condition against Blurple, is if you just go Sail, Tipo, and next Donald Duck, and then now you're on Hades, or now you're on Clarabelle, right? So that's pretty powerful. Or if you're able to go Sail into a Sail plus Tipo, and you're able to play just hyper ramp and going really hard into it is another good win condition if you can get like two turns of draw from that Clarabelle before they get to Hades. So, and then finally, just be aware that a lot of them will be on TikTok this weekend. So between TikTok and Iago, that's some pretty good answers. That TikTok and Iago can now clear your Clarabelle with an Elsa, and now they can move damage. So that's something else to keep in mind, and that those are 2 powerful cards, and they're the cards why I'm running head held high now, because now they just that Iago just gets cleared, and then the TikTok can now be cleared by Under the Sea, and it's just felt really, really good. Now Purple Steel is tougher. Purple Steel has a lot of things going for it, in that it has these early questers that are just annoying. They challenge really well. They have a great way to remove your Clarabelle as well with the Elsa and Captain Hook and Calhoun's. Yes, they have to trade their whole board to do it, but they still manage to do it. And then they have just a lot of draw. They have the reach, so you can control their whole board, but then they have giant cobras and white roses to gain that lore there. So it's a little bit more difficult, the matchup overall, but what you're trying to do here is really no different than the Blurple matchup. Except what you're really trying to dig for in this matchup in particular is getting that head held high, that Triple H, and getting that Under the Sea. So you're going to play those Donald Ducks, give them the cards, you don't care because they're going to play them, and then you don't want to trigger really their cantrips, so you just give them the cards, whatever, it's fine, life goes on, and then you're just digging. So you're finding your develops, you're finding your visions, and you're pulling out those Under the Seas and the Triple H's to just clear their whole board. And when there's so much cheap cards, there's a good chance they're just playing it. Or even better, they're expecting the Under the Sea Triple H, so they're holding cards back. The longer the match goes on, the better it is for you. And remember, on the play, you're looking for that 3-cost Clarabelle. So if you wanted to even things up a little bit, you could always maximize or you could go like 3 and 3 on the Clarabelles. So the 3 little ones and the 3 big ones to kind of even the odds against Blurple and Purple Steel. Other things going on here, not a lot. I mean, you're just trying to get characters out. If we're looking specifically at Purple Steel, your best friends are Scrooge McDuck. Scrooge McDuck is phenomenal. The Clarabelle into Clarabelle. And then John Silver and Basil just stopping your opponent from being able to do things. You just bounce their cards back. John Silver to give them Reckless. Now, like I said, I think a lot of the decks are going to have Dumbo either over Dolores or Yzma, or go a little bit of a different route. But just remember that Reckless, that the card with the big ears, the Dumbo, can get around Reckless, okay? And then he also gives away for the Genie and the Elsa to get around Reckless. worst case scenario, you use John Silver on Genie, and he can now only get the 1 lore instead of 2 lore because of Dumbo's effect. Something else to keep in mind. Now, let's talk about the other 2 lists that I think are going to be really popular in this the weekend's games, and those are going to be these hyper aggro lists. And the top one is my Amber Steel hyper aggro list. The bottom one is the gentleman who took second at the Anaheim 6K. I think his name was Travis. I'm sorry if I'm wrong, man. I apologize. But I think these are going to be at least I think these will be the most popular hyper aggro lists. I do think there's other versions. I'm not saying card for card. It's just these are what they're going to look like. We're going to see a lot of dogs and a lot of this hyper aggro Amber Steel. And there are other hyper aggro lists. We've seen some green purple popping up. I've been playing a lot of green purple and purple steel burn that have felt really good, but those are a little bit more quieter right now, so we're looking at these ones. And what are we trying to do here? Again, it's like purple steel, except we don't need the Triple H. We don't need Triple H against these decks. All we need is Under the Sea. So all we're trying to focus on is getting to the point where we can sing Under the Sea. So we're trying to get that the Donald Duck isn't quite as good into these lists because we are a little weary to give them draw. But if that's all you can do, that's all you can do. And but if you can get Scrooge McDuck down first, get that Scrooge McDuck down on turn 3, Scrooge McDuck can start trading into things already. And then on turn 4, you play a John Silver. Yeah, John Silver on turn 4. No. A Donald Duck on turn 4 to get that ink. You can't play that. So you're getting to the point where you can have 8 Singer on the board. Whether that's Scrooge McDucks and Donald Ducks, it doesn't matter. 2 Scrooge McDucks would be perfect. But you're getting to the point where you can sing Under the Sea. And that's the number one thing that you have going on. First, get the turn 2 ramp. You always have to get the turn 2 ramp. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's much like the red-blue meta of last set with Sharks. If you don't have ramp, you alter 7 to get ramp. Like, that's it. So, with that being said, Under the Sea is everything. Now, I think the Steel matchup is a little bit tougher, and the reason for that is because they do have Strength of a Raging Fire and Fire the Cannon. So, they can answer that Clarabelle, so keep that in mind. But other than that, I think things can feel relatively fine. Remember that Ursula will dig and take out that Under the Sea. So with that Ursula, you can't keep Under the Sea, and you might even consider TPOing it. Like that's something you might want to do, because what you want to do is set up your singers first, and then find a visions, find a develop to find the Under the Seas. Okay, with 4 visions you should find one, and digging through 5 cards when you run 3 of them, it's a good chance that you're going to see it there. So just do not hold on to those Under the Seas, okay? And because you don't want to lose because they Ursula it. So if you have it in your opening hand, that's perfectly fine. Get rid of it, okay? Get rid of it. And if you have Tipo, I'd even recommend inking him with Tipo. Don't even risk them stealing that card from you. Just take the free ink and just move on. But that's really what you're trying to do here. Develop the Scrooge McDucks and find Under the Sea, and that's how you win. Otherwise, they just win on turn 4, turn 5. So something to keep in mind. But at that point, all you're trying to do then is get those John Silvers down, get those Basils down, where you can bounce cards back to their hand, you can give them Reckless and things like that. So yeah, these are going to be, that's just kind of how you do hyper aggro. If we look at the list, there's not really much else going on. You get the Under the Sea, so you play the 2 Scrooge McDucks or whatever you need to be able to get to Under the Sea, and then you just try and control the board with John Silvers and Basils. So after that point, that's what you're searching for, is these 2 cards here. So overall, and don't be afraid to bounce either. Just bounce their stuff back to their hand. Make them replay it. That doesn't matter either. And so yeah, that's kind of what I would do with Baja Blast this weekend. This is a little bit of a different video than it normally is. But maybe if you guys want, I can go a little bit. I can go more in depth in the next video on altars and lines and things like that. But overall, that's how I'm going to be rocking. That's how I would rock Baja Blast this weekend. And this is what I would run this weekend. Again, shout out to everybody that's been kind of sharing ideas and hive mind going to work. And yeah, it's feeling good. It's feeling really good. And this Donald Duck, again, shout out to JP. The Donald Duck felt like the missing piece in the list. And it's felt really nice. And now it's just figuring out what we need from there. But I like it. It's made things a little bit more fun for sure. So ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed the video as always. If you did, of course, do the whole thing, the like, the comment, the subscribe. If you want to see that blue-green guide, I'll do a mulligan or an altar video next week, probably after a meta report on Monday or Tuesday. And I'll do like a guide walking through more of the lines and more of the altars and what specifically I'm looking for. We can talk about what I'd ink when and why and things like that. But ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed the video, and until next time, stay happy and healthy.